Yeah, I think I can't stress the importance for entrepreneurs to know their business. And what I mean by that is know every aspect and the importance of HR. I did not know the importance of HR until we got to 20 employees, and we ultimately ended up at around 75 employees. But the value of HR and building that culture is so critical. Building a career development path for each of your employees is so critical. So the value of HR, but knowing that the different aspects of your company, HR, finance, accounting, sales, marketing, you can hire the experts, but as a business owner, nobody wants it more than you. Nobody knows the business more than you. And so being a part of those aspects of your business are critical in providing that. We talk about leadership. You have to lead those people. You can hire a great salesperson, but if that person has no leaders, has no one to look up to from a leadership perspective, and are just out on their own, they're not going to perform as well as if you can help guide them in the right direction and align a strategy with them. Same thing with finance and accounting. So the biggest errors I see is hiring people to take on those roles and then assuming that it's going to work, because in most cases it doesn't.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Welcome to the Play Your Position podcast, a show that explores leadership, authenticity, and doing what makes you feel most alive. I'm your host, Mary Lou Kaiser, author of The River Only Runs One Way and The Far Unlit Unknown, 2 books available right now at your favorite online book retailer. Check them out and make them your companions on the next leg of your leadership journey. Also, the launch of my latest book, It's Not You, It's the Algorithm, is getting closer, and I'm super excited. Follow me on my Substack handle, gobeyondthescroll.com, to stay in the loop about everything I'm doing, including the book launch. That's gobeyondthescroll.com and hit subscribe. It's totally free and lots of good stuff going on over there. All right, on to today's conversation. What if the key to unlocking your business's true potential lies in understanding a language most entrepreneurs never learn? Today, I'm talking with Jason Kruger, a financial expert who has navigated the complex world of business ownership, accounting, and strategic growth. Jason shares his journey from building and selling a successful analytics firm to helping entrepreneurs unlock their true potential by mastering their financial infrastructure. Jason reveals the often overlooked secrets of scaling a business, the transformative power of understanding your numbers, and why human insight remains crucial in an increasingly AI-driven world. Boy, isn't that the truth? Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply curious about what it takes to turn financial challenges into opportunities, today's episode promises to be an eye-opening exploration of business success from someone who's been in the trenches and emerged victorious. You can find Jason on LinkedIn and his website. Links to connect with him are in the show notes below. When you connect, let him know you heard him here on the Play Your Position podcast. Okay, team, are you ready for kickoff? Because I sure am. Let's go. All right, Jason, it is so great to have you here on the Play Your Position podcast. I always look forward to these conversations because every guest brings their own insights, experiences, stories about what it means to lead in a complex world. And the world that you're in is certainly complex to a lot of listeners, albeit a very important topic. And as I shared in my intro of you, you're knee deep in accounting and you've just sold a business not that long ago. So you know what that process is like. And you're also sticking around to work within the company that bought you and continue to help steer things, which I think is an interesting choice because I have interviewed several guests over the years who, once they sold their company, they were gone. No, they just decided they didn't want to stick around. So tell us about how you became who you are now and connected to being a leader, because you are. Anybody who becomes an entrepreneur who sells a business is a leader. So give us your story about getting the call to leadership and how that's influenced what you're doing.
Yeah. And thank you so much for having me on, Mary Lou. I think, a lot of it is, there's different aspects of, who I am and how I, how I became who I am today. Obviously, the foundation of growing up and my family life and the experiences I had there. But I think what the underlying thing that I've always seen in business and in accounting and finance, and we were talking about this, before we jumped on here, is finance and accounting is a trade, pretty much, right? It's like you basically, it's another language. So you have to learn the language, you have to learn your trade. And so my experience in business is, one, I had to understand and learn my trade, which was accounting and finance. And so, that takes years and years and years to really learn, and you're still always learning. There's too much for anybody to actually know. And that's why there's so much guidance and communications and disagreements on everything. And so for me, it was understanding that trade. That's the foundation of my background within business, is the trade of finance and accounting. But to truly grow my career, and I'll just speak for me personally, and what I believe is, in order to achieve the desired results in my career, and in order to continue to grow my career, what was just as important, or more important actually, than knowing my trade, was understanding the nuances of communication within the individuals that I'm working with and within our clients, the third parties that may be looking for different information. So really understanding the nuances of communication and an understanding of how people think. So in other words, when I talk to a client, my goal is to, and I tell our clients every time, up front, we say every time, my goal, you need, as a client, you need to see the value that you see in the services that we're performing have to align with the cost point that you're paying. Because if you feel that you're paying more than the value that you are perceived to be receiving, you're not going to want to continue working with me. And my goal is for you to see more value than that you're paying.
Can I just ask, how do people respond to that? Because that's so direct and candid. You're not trying to hide anything. You're being very honest. Like, hey, I want you to feel like what you're paying me is more valuable than what you're paying me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, they say they're all in, right? The smart person would say, the smart person would say, okay, well, it sounds great, but you got to prove it too, right? Which is important. Yeah. But the next thing I follow up with is I say, and the value that you're getting isn't the value I'm telling you you're getting. I could tell you I'm giving you value all day long, but if you don't see it or you don't feel it, then you're not going to want to pay for it. And so that's a distinction on how we go to market with our clients, which is, I can't just throw the kitchen sink at you and tell you you're getting all the value in the world and expect you to pay for it. It's understanding the mindset of the client and looking through the client's eyes and point of view to really understand where they see value and how we can identify quick wins, how we can really achieve the results through their eyes. And so that's all part of the maturation of my career. Going back to your original question about leadership, is number one is, obviously learn your trade. You have to be an expert in what you're doing. Otherwise you have no foundation and you're just kind of blabbering and you have no credibility. You have no credibility in the market, right? If you can't speak to what you're an expert in, smart people will see right through that. But once you have that expertise, which I did for my experience, I spent a lot of years gaining that expertise and then building that understanding of communication, how people operate, how people think. That allowed me to then go out on my own and start a company called Signature Analytics about 10 years after. I had about 10 years of quote unquote learning my trade. through the big accounting firms, Deloitte, big four firms.
Sure.
And then starting my own firm 10 years later when I was the nice young age now of 32, I guess. And so that was 16, almost 17 years ago now. And so that foundation was, again, going out to clients. Yes, we have as a company that expertise, but we're going to focus on where you see value, and we're not going to throw the kitchen sink at you. There's no law that says you have to have accrual accounting. Now, we recommend it, but there's also different levels of what that means. And as a small company or a mid-sized company, maybe you're not being audited, you don't need full GAAP public company compliance. Maybe you need 90% of the way there. So really understanding that, I think, is where I've tried to differentiate myself. And then again, that then flows through to how you build how I've built a business, which is through communication, through ensuring that the team felt that they were supported effectively, the cultural side of things, make sure we build the company as a platform for career growth. And so all of that has evolved, obviously, and I've learned over time, but that all kind of plays into how I would say, when you talk about leadership, it's being part of a team. It's not, you can be the leader at the top telling everybody what to do, but if you have no one to follow you, then you're not really a leader, right? So I really believe more in getting in the weeds, building that respect from the team, because I've been there, I've done that, and now we're all working together to achieve our goals.
So you talk about clients that come to you. Who do you typically work with? What's going on for them in their businesses?
Yeah, I would say most of our clients are in what I would call the small mid-market. Our sweet spot is 10 million revenue to 100 million revenue. We have a number of clients that are smaller than 10 million. Who I like to work, we have clients that have zero revenue, but they also have significant financial backing.
Got it.
But I like to work with companies or individuals that have a growth mindset and that are looking to grow their business. That's the companies and the individuals that see value in what we're doing. If it's a company that's been around for 30 years and they have the same revenue for 30 years and they're happy doing what they're doing, they're going to look at us as an additional cost point. But it's really companies and organizations and leaders that have gotten to a certain point in their business, and now they feel that they're stuck or they've hit a wall, and so they're in the hamster wheel. And so how do we get them out of that? And in most cases, it's because, you always hear the term, what got us here isn't going to get us to where we, to the next step. And so it's, do we have that foundation? And a common use term that we all hear is scalability, but it's true. So do you have that foundation, and have you built a foundation and a management structure and a business that is able to appropriately scale beyond yourself, the business owner, the entrepreneur? And that involves, the operations, sales and marketing, accounting and finance and HR are the main four areas, I would say. And do you have leaders in those areas? But the last thing I'll say on that is, what I found not to be effective is somebody that says, okay, great, I'm a certain size, I'll just hire a salesperson and they'll do this over here. And then I'll hire a bookkeeper or an accountant and they'll take care of that. And then I can just focus on the operational side. And what ends up happening is the salesperson never works out because they don't have the right leadership. They're not as good as the founder. The bookkeeper may or may not have the expertise. And so they're doing their own thing and they have no oversight, and things become a mess. And so the one piece of advice I always give to business owners is know every aspect of your business deeply. You can hire the experts, but you still need to manage them.
Mm-hmm. Is there a category, a type of business, or is really the main criteria for you is it doesn't matter if they're in real estate or a mom and pop or maybe a car dealership, as long as they have the growth mindset? Is that the bottom? Mm-hmm. That's the entry point. Yeah.
It's really, are you looking to grow your business? And if so, let's talk about how we can help you get there. And a lot of it comes through better visibility into the financial side of the business. Mm-hmm. The first thing we always start with is, do you understand the cash? What are the cash flows of your business? In order to stay in business, you have to understand your cash. not only historical, but your future cash outlook. So let's make sure we have an understanding of what that looks like. And then we can start to build out from there and start to build, one, make sure that we have a process to ensure that you're getting good financials at a minimum every month, timely and accurately, which is sometimes few and far between. And then once we have the basic foundation of being able to produce basic financials, let's start talking about how your business operates, what's important, what are the metrics, the key drivers. Let's understand the margins of the product or service that you're selling so that we can lock that in, and then we know what that is, and now we can work to improve that. Let's look at your expense structure, and are you getting value out of all of the G&A expenses that you're incurring? We see a lot of companies that invest in different types of technology or software, and they're not even using it.
Yes.
So are we either going to use it or are we just going to let it go? And so there's a lot of opportunity now in this day and age with leasing and rent costs. There's different opportunities for finance opportunities for small and mid-sized businesses for financing at decent rates. But the first question that you're going to have is from a banker or somebody that is going to loan you money is, let me see your financials. And so giving the third party that credibility is also important.
Okay. For someone like myself, who this is not my sweet spot, and I think about small business owners that I know, whether they're a business of one or they have a small team, I think at the end of the day, the conversation is the same. You got to know your cash flow. You got to understand what are you spending money on? Why, right? Why did you buy that particular system or technology? What were you hoping it was going to do for you? And talk about the climate that we're in right now, where kind of the zeitgeist is overwhelm and confusion and uncertainty is certainly going on at a global scale. With a lot of people have kind of paused right now because they don't know. My son works for a company, for example, that doesn't know. They can't do demand planning because of where their products are manufactured. And that's happening across the board. So as somebody who's in this financial world, you have a unique perspective on the trends, right? There's always going to be ups and downs in the economy. I think anybody who's paying attention knows that. So what we're in right now is temporary, but we don't have a sense of when it might end.
Yeah.
And yet you just mentioned, hey, there's some pretty cool opportunities right now with, leasing and perhaps borrowing money to help you grow. Could you address basically what's going on right now and put it into a bigger context for us, since you've been in this industry for as long as you have?
Yeah.
People who are listening right now going, man, I don't know if I can even make a move. I don't even know what I should be doing. What would you say to someone like that?
Yeah, and I go back to COVID, which now is 5 years ago.
It seems ancient history.
I know. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and you talk about COVID, and she was like, was I part of COVID? I was like, yeah, you were part of COVID. You were too. But yeah. So I go back to COVID, and the first thing that when this hit and happened, it was a crisis and nobody knew what was going on. So the first thing that we did was, and I think the same applies here. It is fairly sudden and things are uncertain right now. But the same approach, I think, applies here, which is, number one, understand the financial health of your business. And that starts with, we just talked about it, cash flow. So understanding what your cash position looks like right now and what your cash position will look like. I like to say 13 weeks is your baseline. That's a 1 quarter, right? So that's roughly 3 months. So can you forecast that out over the next 13 weeks? Obviously 13 weeks out is a little more hazy. So how can we lock that in over the next week, month, and so on to get really, confidence in that? Some of those areas are going to be uncertain with cash because of the unknowns associated with the tariffs. And so that's where we start to then, once we have a confidence that we can make payroll over the next month, let's say, then we can start to look into some forecasting. And that's where we can look at different scenario planning of, okay, if this happens, it's almost a good, better, great, or what is it? Bad, good, whatever we call it.
Yeah.
But, so what's a bad situation, what's an okay, and what's a great situation. And so we can start to plan that out. But the challenge is, if we don't know our numbers right now, it makes forecasting very challenging. You can forecast cash still, but you can't. It's hard to forecast beyond that to be able to drive better decisions. And what I mean by that is, we talked about your margins of your service or product earlier. If you're a manufacturing company or you're manufacturing in China, your product cost is likely going to go up a lot. If you don't understand your margins right now, how do we know how to make a decision to eat the cost, pass on some of the cost to our customer, pass on all of the cost to our customer? How do we know what we can absorb now so that we continue to maintain strong relationships with our customers? So if we knew our margin was, to make an easy number, 50, say 52%, and the tariffs are going to reduce our margin by 5% to 47%. Can we survive that? Can we not? Now we have to start looking at our, what we call below the line costs, your SG&A, your sales, general administrative costs. Do we need to cut some there? Can we live with that 47% over a period of time to maintain and strengthen customer relationships? Because the customer now knows, hey, thank you, you're eating that for me. Thank you, I'll remember this in the long-term relationship we had. Or can we not survive that and we need to have conversations with our customers? But if you don't know your margin, you don't know the true impact on your business, and it's hard to forecast what your ultimate profitability and cash flows will be beyond that. And when I talk about margins, 1%, I've talked to business owners, what's your margin? It's somewhere between 40 and 50%. On a $10 million company, that's huge, because margin difference drops straight to the bottom line. So 1% on $10 million is $100,000. Mm-hmm. So we want to lock it into the percentage point even of what is your real margin. And then you can say, okay, if our margin is 51%, and we're a $10 million company, how do we get it to 52? And with no additional cost structure, that drops to the bottom line. You've added $100,000 of net income to your business. And so that's the kind of discussions we want to have. But if you don't have clarity and you don't have your books in the right order and your margins bouncing around from month to month, it's kind of hard to do much.
Is that scenario you just painted more common?
Yeah, it's always, that's 9 out of 10 times.
I don't know where, I when I was reading your one sheet, I noticed that you've got some experience in the construction industry. Mm-hmm. And I would love for you to talk about that, because I have listeners who they're either their livelihoods, or they're connected, they're either in real estate or they're in building, or, they're looking, people who invest, say, in real estate. And when you start looking at materials and you start looking at, again, all these factors that play in to what's happening right now, I know it's going to come back down to a math problem. You just got to have those numbers really clear. Does your wisdom pretty much fit every single industry? You just, at the end of the day, you've got to know your cash flow. That's what I'm hearing. And you've got to know your margins, whether you're a service industry or a product-based industry. Which one, in your experience, Jason, has a harder time with being able to articulate to you what their margins are? Is it service or product?
It's always product-based.
Really?
Because they have to deal with inventory. And inventory is a challenge.
Yeah.
Going back, so accounting for every business, 90% of accounting is the same. And then the 10% is the industry expertise. Like you said, construction, manufacturing, distribution, service-based, technology, software, all of those. So 90% of the accounting is the same. There's that 10% that's that unique aspect of it that is important to have somebody that understands, so you can really drive and dig deeper. Mm-hmm. When you're talking about a product, when you're talking about construction, it's the WIP report. That's the Bible. It's, that and having confidence in that helps you track the jobs. It's also, in an uncertain time, how you're bidding your projects and what type of what type of contracts you have in place, whether it's a fixed fee pricing or cost plus or things like that. Going back to product-based companies, I've talked to a number of clients up, at the beginning where they say, hey, look at this. Look at my income statement. Look how much we've made. Look how profitable we are. But I have no cash. Like, where is all my cash? And I say, okay, well, there's one of three things that are happening. One, your financials are not correct, which is a very high possibility. The other is,
ouch.
The other is look at, everyone says, I just look at the income statement or P&L. I don't look at the balance sheet. Well, the balance sheet is probably more important than the P&L because that's where your inventory sits. So your inventory, what I tell business owners that carry inventory, your inventory is basically your cash that is on your shelf that you can't use as cash. It's not liquid. So when you're manufacturing a product, the cash cycle is very challenging because you have to pay cash to buy the product. Then you have to spend more cost and energy to produce the product. And then you finally sell the product and then you have terms. And so maybe you get paid on that 30 days later, hopefully. Sometimes it could be 60 or 90. So it could be 120 days minimum where you had to buy the product before you get paid on it. So you got to front all this money up front to then ultimately get paid on the back end, right? And hope to get paid. And so that's the challenge with cash and cash flows with the manufacturing company, which is, especially if you're growing, you're always buying more product.
Right, you have to.
And you're buying exponentially more. So you're buying that ahead of when you're selling. And so you're always going to be challenged with cash if you're growing. So a couple of things is, how do we manage our inventory so that we're not buying too much product? A company that worked with recently, they ended up, part of it was due to COVID and the uncertainties with the supply chain. They ended up with 3 years of product.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, you have way too much product. They were like, we're just buying because we just didn't know if we were going to get it. And so now they have all this that could be used for, that's cash. It could be used for distributions, could be used for other investments in the company. And so that's sitting on the shelf and they got to burn that down.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
Is that product that they bought 3 years worth what I would call an evergreen product, something that people will continue to need, or was it more of the moment? Because I think about businesses that operate more on the trendy side, like they're trying to get, stock their shelves with what's hot. I think of fidget spinners, for example, right? When we went through the fidget spinner phase, all of a sudden they were everywhere. I mean, they were at the grocery store line. They were at your beauty parlor. I mean, on the, someone had a little bowl of them because it was the hot thing. And hey, we can make a little money on this, right? I mean, I would think that would be a hard conversation to have with a business owner. And they're like, yeah, we got 3 years worth of this stuff and nobody wants it.
Yeah. Fortunately for them, it was fairly evergreen.
Oh, good.
But,
okay.
Some of it could go stale, I guess, but that's a good point, because if, then you end up, you have to manage your scrap or your spoilage or whatever happens. And so those are all, they're not tricks. I mean, those are all parts of, if you understand your numbers, you can start to manage that. And that's where you can get those margins back that we talked about, which is, if our spoilage is 10%, how do we cut that to 9 or 8 or 7 or even 5%? If we're losing money, if we don't have any controls in our warehouse and our employees are walking out with our product, and we're losing, that's effectively spoilage or as well. Product just disappears. So that's another thing. But, with manufacturing, it's how do we manage our AR? So we're collecting. How do we work with our vendors so we can get better terms to shorten that cash cycle? And then how do we manage the inventory in our warehouse so that it's lean, but not too lean where we're losing opportunity to sell as well?
Okay.
With
I mean,
services, it's easy. There's a lot of tricks with services, like,
oh, is that right?
and even with manufacturing, it's maybe you can take a deposit up front that helps with some cash flow. You can with services, it's easier. Terms are a little bit easier to navigate as far as getting paid. You don't have to buy product up front. Your product or is your people, so you can try to align the payment cycle with when you're getting paid. So it's a little bit easier than having to buy products so far in advance.
But they both come with complications and certainly risks. And it's again at the end of the day, I keep hearing you say in one way or another, know your numbers, know your cash flow. And yet it seems to me that the majority of people don't. So this is where we get into the nuances of being a business owner and being a successful business owner, because you were able to grow a company to the point where you could sell it. That in itself is a massive milestone in any entrepreneur's life. It's for many, it is one of the goals, is you are intentionally building a business that you can then sell. And whether you decide to stay on like you did, Jason, or you walk away with your big pile of cash to go maybe start another business or whatever, right? Ride into the sunset with the umbrella drink. Everybody has their own dream.
Right.
I would love for you to talk about just the mindset around why do so many people struggle with, and I'm not talking just about business owners, but families, individuals, like credit card debt gets out of control. This I was just reading an article a couple of days ago that the number one category now for buy now, pay later is groceries. People are using a buy now, pay later, or a pay. What is it? Did I say that? Oh, yeah, buy now, pay later.
Now, pay later. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, wow, that is a signal.
Yeah.
That's a signal.
I think it comes back. So I was fortunate because my career is in finance and accounting. So, I'm personally very fortunate from that regard. But it also goes back to what we talked about earlier, which is accounting and finance is like a foreign language to a lot of people.
It is.
And so some people are scared of it. So they're like, I don't want to deal with it. I'll just hire I'll hire a bookkeeper and they'll take care of it. They don't understand the complexity of that. And you can get away with a bookkeeper at a lower level, companies at a lower level. But then they think that same bookkeeper can continue to operate as they get, past 5 million and to 10 million and then beyond. And the complexities are there. And that's where things really fall off the rails. And then they want to get financing and they think, oh yeah, hey, bookkeeper, just send the bank the financials. And then it turns into a big disaster. Or, they can't get their taxes done, or now they're required to have audited financials, and that's a big mess. And so that's where I see that transition point is you can get away with it for a while, but then as you grow, thinking that you can use the team that got you there is what I've seen the biggest challenge. And that's where you need, to really have that expertise. And, someone talks about a CFO or controller. Some controllers I've seen are making $50,000 to $60,000 a year, and other controllers are making over $300,000 a year. Their skill set is clearly different, and the value they bring to the table is clearly different. So the question is, not all CFOs are the same. Anyone can put that on their business card. Not all controllers are the same. Not anyone could put that on their business card. So really understanding what they bring to the table, and that's the challenge, because when you're trying to interview somebody and you don't understand finance and accounting, how do you even know if you're hiring the right person? And that's where I can plug in what we do. That's that's what we do. We support the ongoing accounting and financial environment of our clients on a fractional basis, provide that leadership from an accounting and financial side that they don't have. And we keep it, cost effective, it's scalable. And then we can also provide oversight and support of their internal existing team that they've outgrown and that can still do the blocking and tackling. Yeah,
that outgrowing where you've been, from my own experience and also from talking to so many different people on this show over the years, is one of the hardest hurdles because we don't want to let go of what's familiar, and we feel like, wow, but why doesn't this work anymore? It's worked, right? There's that that process of letting go. And it sounds like that's part of what you offer. You're not just plugging numbers in, but you're actually offering education and coaching. And again, I imagine you come up against some resistance, and also just how do you talk somebody down from there?
Yeah.
How do you talk them down to see that obviously you have a track record, right? You have user case studies. You can say, hey, I've worked with a company very much like yours in this exact situation. But sometimes people don't even want to hear that because it just feels so out of control and so uncomfortable. Yeah. And this is where I think the nuances of leadership come in. So I want to bring it back to the leadership conversation a little bit and, bring us into one of those scenarios. You've obviously gotten really good at understanding what people are thinking when they show up at your door and figure out pretty quickly, okay, this is probably going to go this way. And for people listening who either want to learn that kind of skill for their particular industry or are in that place right now, what might you say to them to help them alleviate some of that anxiety?
Yeah. Well, it usually starts with there's usually some sort of a pain. It's very rare where I'm talking to somebody that says, hey, I want to invest in our accounting and finance function and be prepared. I mean, I would love that, but, how do I get ahead of it? How do I set this up the right way? It happens, but it's very rare. Usually there's some sort of pain. And the pain is a couple of things. One is they had a controller who was really a bookkeeper. And that person was doing kind of a lot of everything. And that person left. And now that person's been there for a while and they knew everything. And now, the company can hardly make payroll because they relied on that person so much. And now they've had them for so long, they don't know what the market rate is. They don't, to rehire somebody, they don't know how to even interview for somebody new. A lot of our current clients have tried to hire a replacement. They can't find anybody that they think is a good fit. And so what we come in and we say, okay, you have a pain point. One, let's understand what you were getting. And let's understand, it always comes back down to, what are your goals as a business owner? And again, you want to grow, great. You have a growth mindset. Do you want to continue to maintain this business for a long period of time? Do you want to sell it or exit? All of those define how we look at the financial side of your business too. If you want to exit, let's talk about how we maximize the value of the business and what that means. And so you can, really go that direction. But if it's somebody that left, we need to say, okay, well, one, we got you. You're going to be okay. Let's make sure that nothing, the day-to-day stuff, nothing falls through the cracks. Make sure bills are being paid, invoices are going out, and we're managing cash, payroll, et cetera. And then it's about talking through, what are you getting currently from, how do you look at your financials? What types of reports are you getting based on the goals that we've just discussed? Here's some best practices that you might consider. And what we typically bring to the table is a lot more expertise than they already had. And we see that person was doing, was quote unquote their CFO, the controller, their bookkeeper. And so we can split those roles and say, you don't need a CFO or you don't need a controller for 40 hours a week. You need somebody that provides that accounting leadership for 40 hours a month. We can leverage a lower level person on your team or our team and really give you more cost efficiencies and value from that perspective. So that's one thing we see. The other is what we talked about before, which is where a company has grown and now they're trying to get financing, or they're having cash challenges because of growth, and they're talking to a bank and they can't get good, they can't get the bank good financial information. And so the reality is they've outgrown and they need to invest in the finance function of their business. And so we tell them up front, we're likely not going to be a cost neutral or a cost saving solution for you. You need to invest one way or the other, whether you invest in us to provide you that flexibility, that expertise, the value, that we've talked about, or you can invest in hiring a full-time person, but you don't have the team to execute on what you're trying to accomplish as you go forward. And now that you're getting financing, they're going to require reviewed or audited financials. Your team doesn't have that expertise. And so we see that a lot as well, where they're saying, oh man, I'm trying to get financing. And then the third part is just the business owner is flat out fed up. They're like, I can't get my numbers. I haven't gotten books my financials, are 5 months late. The financials I get, I can't make sense out of. And a lot of that is because they've grown and the bookkeeper can't catch up, can't keep caught up. And so they're just flat out like, hey, I'm not getting the information I need. And now it's causing me pain and sleepless nights because I don't understand what's happening to my business. And that goes back again to, okay, you need to invest in the infrastructure, the foundation of your business so that you can achieve, so that you can take that next step as a business. And that's another investment that they have to make. And that, I think what a lot of business owners think is, oh yeah, okay, we can outsource our accounting and finance to you. Great. Here's what I'm paying now. And I want you to do everything you said you can do at the same or a cheaper cost. I'm like, well,
it doesn't quite work like that.
But the reality is you're understaffed currently to get what you really want. So you have to invest. So you can hire a full-time person. You can hire an individual one-off consultant, or you can hire our firm to come in and support you. But it's not going to be a cheap or cost neutral solution, because what you need, you need to invest more to get that.
Right now, I imagine that you have an ROI conversation that in the long term, what this is setting you up for this next level of growth that you say that you want, right?
Yeah.
And I imagine that you've had conversations with people where they're saying they want this way over here, but they're way over here, and that gap is really wide. And unless they do something like bring you on to get some stability for this next phase, they're never going to get over here. It's just, it's mathematically impossible.
Yeah. And that's where it comes back to the conversation we had before, which is the value that you see and what you're paying has to align.
Yep.
If you see us as a bookkeeper and that's all you see us is, you're not going to see, you're not what we're saying we're going to charge you, you're not going to see value in that. I can tell you all day long that you're right here and you want to get to here and this is how you do it. But if you flat out just say, hey, I just need a bookkeeper, you're not going to see the value. So it's the mindset of the client. It's hoping to educate them. But some people are just saying, hey, you know what? I just need a bookkeeper. I know what I need. I just need a bookkeeper and I want to pay X and it's a really low amount and that'll solve all my problems so I can move on to what my next problem of the day is. And if that's the mindset, it's very challenging to be successful with those clients.
Yeah. And you don't want to work with them anyway because they don't have the right mindset. They're not willing to see you as a partner in their growth. And I think that universal lesson there for anybody listening is, what you just shared, Jason, is so valuable because sometimes people get really focused on, this represents, as a client, this represents money to our firm or to my business or whatever. And they overlook all the red flags. And what I like about what you've shared with us today is you started out by framing that here's my ideal kind of customer or client. They have a growth mindset. Doesn't matter really what you're doing. If you have a growth mindset and you're at this point in your business where a traditional bookkeeper or controller is not getting it done, then this is the kind of conversation that you probably should have. Now, whether you decide to go with us or not, that's up to you at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
But I really like how you've, again, framed the growth mindset is bottom line variable. And then also that you take a consultative approach, an educational approach where, again, people are coming to you not having your years and years of expertise in finances and accounting. We do a terrible job in this country. That's common knowledge now of teaching financials to young people. Unless you get it at home or you choose a path like you did and formally educate yourself, it seems like, we just got a big client. Now we can go blow all this money. And that happens all the time. You know, they're not thinking about wait a minute, we
Yeah.
got to have some on reserve to do this next thing. And it just
Right.
becomes this vicious cycle.
Right. It's always a challenge with business owners too, because they want to reap the rewards of what they've
Of
built.
course, because they've
And
worked
so,
so hard.
they're working so hard and they've been poor and they've been, I mean, it's not a glamorous, being an entrepreneur sounds great, but it's not glamorous. And people work their butts off and they, you become slave to your business in a lot of cases. And so when they start showing some signs of really success, they want to be able to reap those benefits. And so that's the challenge between, do I put it in my pocket or do I reinvest it back in the business? And if I do reinvest it back in the business, how do I ensure that I'm creating value out of that and not just blowing it on a marketing campaign that's not going to get me anything.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And again, that's where your value comes in. And that's why we're having this conversation today, because the money conversation is so important, no matter where you're at in your business cycle, or if you're working for a company that maybe the owner has his or her sights set on this next level of growth. We are inundated with ideas all the time about do this, like you said. Oh, maybe it's the marketing campaign that we need to invest in. Maybe it's, if we buy all this inventory, I mean, whatever it may be. But it sounds like at the end of the day, what you really should do, and I don't like to should, but what an option is to sit down with someone like you and say, this is where we're at. This is where we want to go. What do we need to think about? And how can you help us do it?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And then you can start scenario planning, like you said.
Right.
And when we talk about building a budget or a forecast, and a lot of companies, they'll do a budget and then they'll throw it in the drawer, or it'll be on their computer somewhere and they'll never look at it again, right? Or it's stale in 2 months. And the worst kind of budget the budgets that I don't like to see is where it's based off of top line. So you say, well, we grew by 20% last year, so we're going to grow by 20% this year. That is not, and in my opinion, that is a very dangerous assumption to make, because unless you have the sales and marketing infrastructure to support 20% on top of 20%,
right.
That's a lot. I mean, 20% on $100 is $20, but then 20% on $120 is, $124. So where are you going to get that extra 4%? And as you grow, depending on your business, you're now going to have, just in general, that dollar of client churn might churn a little bit more, even though it's the same percentage. So the growth assumptions are critical. And I think building a bottoms up approach is what I like to recommend from a budgeting or forecasting perspective. Meaning, if we say we're going to have 10 million in revenue, show me how we're going to do that. Okay. Well, all right. Well, we have these recurring clients that we already know we have, and we know we're going to get 8 million from that. So and we have a sales team. We have 5 salespeople, and we can expect X amount from each salesperson. So that's going to make up the difference. And then we have a marketing campaign where we know we can do this and this and this. But just to say, wow, 20% growth, and you haven't, and there's no additional investment in sales, no additional changes in marketing. Unfortunately, it's going to be, might be challenging to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah. And it comes right back down to leadership. What is it that you really want to have happen? And are you willing to invest in the right people? And working with a fractional firm like yours I think it's on the upswing, because people are becoming more aware that this is an option, that you don't have to hire a full-time person that may not be giving you 40 hours. But that yet they're an investment, or, they're taking monies from your big pot.
Yeah.
A lot of great stuff today, Jason. For people who want to learn more about you and your firm and how they can get in touch with you, where do you hang out online? What's the best way to connect?
Yeah. So, anyone can email me directly at the letter J Kruger. That's Kruger. So J Kruger at citronCooperman.com. Citron is with a C. So CITRIN. I'm, always, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. You can obviously reach me through that. This should be pretty straightforward. If you see, with Citron Cooperman, those are probably the two easiest ways. I used to say go to our website, but then when we were acquired, Citron is, a little bit bigger and a little bit more. I think we need to maybe potentially improve a little bit things there. We're working on that.
Sure.
But I think, reaching out directly, I love talking to business owners, and if I can help or we can help, that's great. If not, I usually know somebody that probably I can point them to that can help.
I love that. And I think it always starts with a person. The website can be great. It looks flashy and clean and everything. And I'm talking about any website, not just yours, but it can feel a little impersonal. And so, team, there will be a link to his email, to Jason's LinkedIn profile. So you can reach out to him directly and get to know more about what he can offer. And if you know somebody who's looking for what he offers, absolutely refer. That's part of why I do this show. I love to present leaders who know what they're talking about and who can help solve problems that every company has, which is a money problem.
Right.
And before we say goodbye, I haven't asked this in a while, but I would love for you to share with us who your team is, Jason. When you're not crunching numbers and sitting down with clients, who are you watching? Any sport. It doesn't have to be football.
Sports. Okay. So I'm in San Diego personally.
Okay.
But so my team is the San Diego Padres, and fortunately, so far they're doing pretty well this year. So it's been challenging being a Padres fan over the years, but
it has.
Crossing our fingers that this might be this is the year.
Yeah. Well, we are thick in baseball season right now. It's. I'm a Mets fan, and we're off to a great start. Yep, I don't think we've played you guys yet, but no. I just love baseball, and I love football too. But I do love I love all sports. I'm entrenched in the NBA playoffs right now.
Oh yeah,
it's just fun. It's just fun. Last thing, Jason. I like to give my guests the last word. What's one thing that you didn't get a chance to say today about your business, your industry, or just life in general that you could end this amazing conversation with?
Yeah, I think I may have mentioned this, but I can't stress the importance for entrepreneurs to know their business. And what I mean by that is know every aspect and the importance of HR. I did not know the importance of HR until we got to 20 employees, and we ultimately ended up at around 75 employees. But the value of HR and building that culture is so critical. Building a career development path for each of your employees is so critical. So the value of HR, but knowing that the different aspects of your company, HR, finance, accounting, sales, marketing, you can hire the experts, but as a business owner, nobody wants it more than you. Nobody knows the business more than you. And so being a part of those aspects of your business are critical in providing that. We talk about leadership. You have to lead those people. You can hire a great salesperson, but if that person has no leaders, has no one to look up to from a leadership perspective, and are just out on their own, they're not going to perform as well as if you can help guide them in the right direction and align a strategy with them. Same thing with finance and accounting. So the biggest errors I see is hiring people to take on those roles and then assuming that it's going to work, because in most cases it doesn't.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes. But leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.